In this lab, we're poisoning the backend server's response queue by injecting a carriage return line feed into one of the request headers and appending a complete GET request. If we get the timing right, we're able to capture the 302 response to the administrator's login attempt, and we can capture the admin's session cookie. But we can't actually automate this lab with burp intruder, so we'll need a little bit of luck with the timing to capture that 302 response. Let's get started. I'm on the homepage of the lab here, and the first thing we want to do is switch to burp and confirm the vulnerability. So I'm going to go to proxy and HTTP history and grab this get/request for the root and send it to repeater, and then switch to repeater. The first thing you want to check is that you're actually using HTTP2 here. So if you're not, let me duck the inspector window to the left to make it easier to see. So you can go to request attributes and you can upgrade the protocol to HTTP2 here if you're using HTTP 1.1. So just send the request after, just to make sure that you get back at 200 OK and that checks out. So our client is using HTTP2 to talk to the front end, and we're assuming that the front end is talking HTTP 1.1 with the backend. So what we're trying to exploit here is the HTTP2 to HTTP 1.1 rewrite mechanism that the front end is using, and we want to inject an extra GET request within a new request header that we'll be adding here. So to inject a request, let's go to the request headers here and drop down, and then we can click plus. And for the name, pick any name, lowercase. I'm going to pick foo for a value of bar. And then we want to add a carriage return line feed to signify the end of the foo request header itself. And then we add another carriage return line feed to signify the end of this request, because you have to think that this header is actually inserted on line 17, and it's the final request header that will be shown here. And so this double carriage return line feed, so the first one will signify the end of the header, and the next carriage return line feed will signify the end of the request. And then we can actually on line 18 here start our new request that we're poisoning the backend with. So this will be a GET request. And by the way, the carriage return line feeds here, you can insert them through Shift Enter. So we do a GET request for something that doesn't exist, because that way we can test whether we get a 404, and we're using HTTP 1.1. Then we do another carriage return line feed with Shift Enter. And then we add the host header, copy that, and then paste it here. So now it might be that we have to add a carriage return line feed and another carriage return line feed if the front end isn't adding these during the rewrite process to HTTP 1.1, but we don't know that yet. So let's start without them. And if this attack works like this, then we know that the front end is adding them. If not, we can go back here and add those carriage return line feeds. So I'm going to click add here. And you can see that this request shows as kettled. This is just because we're adding carriage return line feeds in one of the request headers in their values, and burp isn't sure how to display that in the request window here. That's why we're not seeing any output, but that's perfectly normal. So if we send this request, we get a 200 OK. Let's go to the lab and just refresh the page, and we get a 200 OK. I think it looks a bit weird. I was expecting a 404, but it might be that the lab victim was browsing the website when we sent our attack request, or right after. So let's switch back and send this request again, and then refresh this. And yeah, now we do get the 404 not found. So that could happen if the lab victim is browsing the site in the background, and the victim will eat up the request that we've poisoned the backend with, basically. So I'm refreshing the page just to normalize the situation here on the lab. And then I'm going to switch back to burp. And then the next thing we want to do is actually, now that we've confirmed the vulnerability, we want to make sure that we modify the path to something that doesn't exist as well. That way, when we keep sending this attack request, we can be certain that when we see a 404, we know that that's a response to one of our own requests that we sent, either the one that we sent here or the one that we sent in the smuggled request. And then when we see a non-302 or a non-404 response, like a 302 or a 200, we know that it's a response that was intended for our victim. So let's send this attack request. I get a 404 not found. Let's keep sending it. Oh, and I'm actually really, really lucky, because on my second attempt, I am getting this 302 found for the administrator account. So I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to copy this. And then, so that was a response that was intended for the victim. But because we poisoned the response queue with that extra GET request, it was sent to us. So I'm going to refresh this page just to make sure that it works. Let me check here and then go to the session and replace it, save it, and then refresh the page and go to my account. And yep, we're logged in as the administrator. And then go to the admin panel and delete the user Carlos. And there we go. If I refresh the page, Congratulations, you've solved the lab. Now, it could be that you have to retry this a few times. So what I would suggest is that if it takes a while, just send the attack request like every 5 seconds and then send another attack request. It might take a while. Like when I solved this lab previously, it took me like a good 4 to 5 minutes of doing this. And you can't actually automate it with burp intruder because burp can't actually, or intruder can't actually do this trick with the carriage return line feeds in the request headers. So you're left with the manual approach unless you try scripting it in something like Python. But yeah, just retry every 5 seconds or so, and then you should eventually get a 302 response with the leaked session cookie of the administrator. And then you're able to solve the lab. I hope this was helpful to you, and thank you for watching.